Okay, right now is 4:04 p.m. We are going to open for April 23, 2024 special Board of Education meeting. All meetings of the Board of Education are open to members of the public unless publicly notice as a confidential closed section as allowed by the law. Member of the public may address the board as outlined in the public comment section of the agenda. The audience of the all meeting is a recording, and a member of the public may be held liable for any sentence or otherwise defamatory statement. In consideration of the board and the members of the audience, please turn off, silence your cell phone while in the ballroom. The San Marino Unified School District encourages those with a disability to participate fully in the public meeting process. If you need a disability-related modification or accommodation, including auxiliary aid or service to participate in the public meeting, contact the assistant to the superintendent at the JDELATORRE at SMUSD.US or 626-299-7000 extension 1310. At least 48 hours before the scheduled board meeting so that we may make every reasonable effort to accommodate you. Document provided to a majority of the Board of Education regarding an open section item on this agenda will be made available for public inspection in the district office located at the 1665 West Drive, San Marino, during normal business hours. In addition, such writing and the document may be viewed on the district website at the www.smusd.us. Number one, open section. Number two, call to the order, roll call. Ms. Lam.
Here.
Ms. Chang.
Here.
Ms. Gear.
Here.
Mrs. Wright.
Hi, I'm here. And you're doing such a great job. I'm going to let you finish.
Okay.
You're right there?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Since we've done roll call, I'd like to get the approval for the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Gill, and thank you, Mrs. Chong. Roll call for the agenda. Mrs. Lam?
Aye.
Mrs. Chong?
Aye.
Mrs. Gill?
Aye.
Mr. Chang?
Aye.
Myself, Mrs. Ryan, aye. And so with that, were there any public comments? The Board of Education has adopted Board Policy 9323B to ensure the public's right to be heard in any matters pertaining to the San Marino Unified School District. Persons who wish to provide public comment will have three options to submit public comments. First, you may submit through an online form, request to speak during the meeting via Zoom, or request to speak during the meeting in person via the public comment card. And so as of 12 p.m., were there any comments submitted? Thank you. And so comments received during that time would have been read, but there were no comments received during the for the meeting, and it would have been provided to the Board of Education. All right, request to speak during the meeting via Zoom. Dr. Choi, it's you.
Thank you, President Ryan. We'll pause for 1 minute. Taking requests to speak regarding matters on the special agenda. If there's any request, go ahead and please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or anyone who's present may submit a public comment card. For our Zoom audience, 30 seconds remain. If you'd like to make a request, please press the raise hand icon or dial *9. Hey, President Ryan, we have one request from Jeff Morris.
All right. Hi, Jeff, go ahead.
Hi all. I just wanted to say that I'm really excited to hear what you all come out of this meeting with. As the chair of the Facilities Advisory Committee, we've been very impressed with LPA's contributions to the development of the facilities master plan and needs assessment to date. And I believe they're going to lead you through a great process in this special meeting. I apologize that I'm not able to be there in person for this meeting, but I look forward to seeing you all later tonight at the regularly scheduled board meeting.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, with that, Dr. Troy, there are no other raised hand?
No
Okay.
others.
All right. You may also request to speak during the meeting in person via the public comment card. At this time, Jennifer, are there any comment cards? Okay, none. Hearing none, I would like to convene or start the board study session. I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Michael Lin to introduce our guest speakers from LPA, Team Civics, and Keegan, who will lead the board through a discussion related to a prospective bond measure. The Board of Education will participate in a board study session related to a prospective bond measure, and the study session will include presentations from all three groups that I just introduced. All right, Mike.
Thank you, Board President Ryan, members of the Board of Education, Superintendent Dr. De La Torre, executive team, and online viewers. This evening in our special board study session, we have our bond consultant, Joy Coomer from Team Civics. We also have Rick Musto and Jo May Liao from LPA Designs to provide an update and facilitate a hands-on prioritization activity. Also present is our financial advisor, Chet Wang from Keegan, who is here to answer any questions about financing after the hands-on activity. So I'm going to hand it over to Joy.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you again today. We did not do rock, paper, scissors. We just decided, I volunteered to go first today. But I thought it would be helpful as we talk a little bit about the process of where we've been and where we are going, giving you plenty of time for the rest of the study session to be involved in the prioritization, to hear more from LPA, and to have an opportunity to really continue this very thoughtful process. I am a partner at Team Civics. We've been working with the district over the years. I myself personally have been for many years now on the parcel tax measures, and happy to be here to talk a little bit about the bond this evening. One of the things that I wanted to start with is our overall timeline. As a reminder across the top, I've shared this slide many times before, but I always find it's a nice refresher. You'll see that we have until August 9th to deliver a resolution to the county if the board decides to move forward with a potential GO bond measure. Now, tonight, during the study session, you'll have an opportunity to hear more about the needs that were discovered through the facilities master planning process done by LPA. And there are a few ways that districts are able to receive funding in order to take on projects that are identified later as you'll be going through that process. So many districts look to a potential GO bond measure to help fund those facility needs and also provide those matching funds that later help them be eligible for state matching funds, should the state move forward with a bond as well in November. We have done a feasibility assessment. We worked with FM3 on a survey, a voter survey, and we are actually working with them currently on a tracking survey as well to see how well the community has been able to absorb some of the information that we've shared and how much they understand about the facilities needs assessment. We'll be bringing that back later, that second survey. But our initial feasibility study did show that there was a path forward for a potential bond measure should the board choose that direction. We're currently in stages 2 and 3. We're working on awareness building. We've recently sent a newer informational mailer talking about the facilities master planning process. I have a visual of that up here, but it's likely that you all also received it at your homes. And then finally, should you decide to move forward with a bond measure in November, we will work ultimately with your bond counsel on putting together a resolution, developing the 75-word ballot question that would appear with the voters' ballot books, as well as all the accompanying materials that go with that. That last arrow, which is yellow, actually talks about the independent campaign committee. Once you vote to put a measure on the ballot, the district really has to be careful about its communications. You can always answer questions. You can always answer factually. You can say the board voted. You can tell people how much the bond amount is. You can share with them the total project list. What you can't do is advocate. You can't ask them to take a position on the measure, at least not in your official capacities. As volunteers, you can be involved in that independent campaign committee, but it is a separate set of individuals who really runs that community and does that outreach. And I would like to share that I have had some communications with some community members who have expressed an interest in being involved in that process should the board move forward. As you can see, we've completed some initial communications, including a fact sheet about the process. Once we have our survey back and you've completed your prioritization, we will work on updating this material to reflect all of that process going forward. This really still is focused on the process itself and where we are in that process. We also developed frequently asked questions. There is a lot of information on the website. Thanks to Dr. Lin. We've worked with him to make some additions and some updates. We did a lunch and learn, which is also available on the website should anyone have more questions about the budget. And then we have sent out now 2 mailers. Our first mailer to the community talked in an introductory fashion about the facilities master planning process. We were able to invite them to a town hall, and we did actually see some increased participation in that with LPA at that meeting. Recently, we just sent out this second informational mailer. It's a little bit hard to tell how this would fold, but you can imagine the students on the back make up the back panel where the address label would be. The front cover is of the graduates throwing their hats up. And then the side left, I always have to stop and think, the side left really is all of the information that we borrowed from LPA about the process that the district has gone through, really trying to help people understand all of the outreach and all the work that has been done throughout the district. You'll notice on the inside, the bottom page is actually the same size. It's just reflective of the inside of the informational mailer. And we've actually shown some pictures of some of the need around the districts, really helping bring people along in the process. Again, we've included a QR code and encouraged people to stay involved and continue to learn more. Yes.
Was this sent to all registered voters, all residents? What was the sort of target group of the mailer?
Yes, as a district, you're not allowed to actually target. So we do have to mail broadly. We did send it to all registered voters within the district, and I believe also all parents, regardless of registration.
Thank you.
We are planning to do a final mailer once we've wrapped everything up and the board has made decisions. We'd like to give people an opportunity to understand what would be involved in a potential GO bond measure, what types of projects could be funded, and provide any additional information. That would be closer to when the board would vote, but before that board vote, not together. So we'll be working with the district staff on that as well. This is where I really talk a little bit about those next steps. We have our study session this evening. We'll continue public outreach, which we've been working on. We will complete the tracking survey and have that information back to you. We're waiting till as late as possible in May so that it is as close to the actual election as we can get, but you still have good information before you have to vote to put something on the ballot. As I mentioned, we'll work on sending that final informational mailer, finalize our public outreach. You'll have finalized the the facilities master planning process. And then on June 25th, that is what we are targeting for the board to vote, should you decide to place a potential measure on the ballot. At that point, we would transition to that independent campaign committee. Those are all the slides I have tonight. Obviously, a GO bond is only one piece of that. As you go through this process, you'll be figuring out, based on your district and what you could raise through a GO bond, that will determine how you might be able to prioritize some of the projects that have been identified in the facilities master plan. You, like all districts around the state, will face a very difficult decision where you have far more need than what you can generate from a GO bond. So there are districts all over the state right now going through a similar difficult decision process. So thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any other questions. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to LPA.
Thank you. Did the board have any questions for? Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Joy. Members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Delatorre. It's a pleasure to be here today. The very important day to walk you through kind of where we've been and engage in a really exciting process so you can assist with the prioritization process of all the work that's been done. So today we're going to try to equip you with much information as possible so you can make an informed decision when you start looking at some of the difficult choices of which project should rise to the top in terms of the amount will fit within the GO bond and the funding that the district has available to themselves. So we're going to talk about the themes. We're going to walk you through very quickly the master plan diagrams, not spend too much time, and go through a funding analysis and talk about all the different funding sources in addition to the GO bond potential, and then talk about the cost estimate and the total need that's been identified through this whole process. And in that cost estimate, it's been basically organized in scope categories, and we're going to walk you through what all those scope categories are. And those scope categories will be the main areas that you will be making decisions on what to prioritize in terms of projects that might move forward should you pass a bond. That'll be the activity that we do. So hopefully the presentation part will be about 30 minutes and allow about 30 minutes for the activity when you do the prioritization. And we have left you some things in front of you that like a little cheat sheet on all the different scope categories. So you can use that to refer to. We'll go through some of these things quickly. And then we have other resources. We can refer back to some of the data that we present to you if you have questions when we get into that process. So one of the purposes are just to review the FMP process. We want to also make sure you understand all the different prioritizations that have taken place, including the Facilities Advisory Committee priorities, the school site principal priorities. Those are all, we've already gathered all that information for you. And then hopefully that will give you enough background to understand and for you to then make your recommendations for prioritization. Here's a schedule that it's very difficult to read, but we started in June. And originally, if you remember, we were going to try to wrap or have kind of this particular meeting in December of 2023. There's a pretty key meeting in October that was a community forum. And during that community forum, there was a lot of great questions asked. And the district made a really smart decision to slow the process down a little bit, take a little more time. And we actually scheduled a second community forum and a little more community outreach, which allowed us to make sure that we got that information out in front of everybody And you can see we actually slowed it down by about 4 months or so to where we are today in April to get to the information, which I think was a really great decision. Plus, really perfect timing for you to get this information today to lead into the next steps that Joy aligned with you. This is a element that Joy had on her mailer. This talks about the engagement process that kind of summarizes all the things we've been doing for the last 10 months or so. We had initial board meetings and we've been meeting regularly with the leadership group. So we've had about 12 meetings there, plus site visioning workshops and meetings with the school sites and the principal follow-ups. We've the Facilities Advisory Committee, we've had 5 different meetings, including the last one where we did the prioritization exercise with the FAC group. And community town halls 2, plus a community partners meeting, campus walks, focus group workshops, at visioning. And then we did electronically surveys. So we surveyed 124 students and 536 total, including community members and teachers and administrators. So if you take all that in all together, it's quite an impressive amount of work and amount of engagement we've had with all the various representatives of the district and community. So I think the process worked, and I think we got the word out as much as possible, and we got everything the right folks. So this is just a summary of the prioritization process that took place with the Facilities Advisory Committee. And maybe I can just run through this, Jermaine, and you're going to go over. So again, it was a very difficult decision, and this will make more sense when it gets to the funding part of the presentation, where you can see the total need versus the amount that would be available through funds. But these are the different scope categories. Some of the higher scope categories that resonated with the FAC group is the repair, modernize, reconfigure existing classrooms, restrooms, which includes HVAC, intrusion alarm, fire alarm, and work in window replacements. So that was one of the higher priorities in tier 1. Library at Valentine Elementary School. Safety and security in general across all school sites is a high priority. Site utilities, a lot of the infrastructure, as you know, is old and dated and needed to be replaced. So that was an intelligent decision to prioritize that. Technology, the equipment and infrastructure and the fiber backbone was prioritized. The multi-purpose room, NPR and food service at Valentine Elementary School, which you know that that school does not have multi-purpose. It actually has to share with Huntington. So that was an important piece. And then doing exterior play spaces, play fields, and hard courts. New construction classrooms. There's a lot of the 2 elementary sites we do are attempting to replace portables and incorporate the new grade level TK that has to be incorporated into all schools across the district or across California, and doing that by removing some of the portables and building new construction for that TK program. And then student support and counselors, speech, site, and IEP or IEP spaces, conference spaces were prioritized. And then lastly, CTE career tech spaces at San Marino High School. And an example is the medical arts facility. So those were the things that were in tier 1. Then just as a backup, some of the things that were kind of on the cusp that wanted to be acknowledged by the FAC group, that would be like the second tier should additional funds become available. That would be elementary school STEM, arts, music classrooms, middle school and high school elective spaces, CTE, career tech, and performing arts spaces, and then physical education, athletic improvements, specifically at the high school, gym, locker rooms, and pool facilities. So those were acknowledged as the second tier priorities by the FAC. And again, I'll go over all these sport categories, scope categories in detail when we get later in the program. And I'll let Joe May kind of go over the rest of the prioritizations.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Rick. So Rick presented the FAC committee's priorities, and prior to them participating in that activity, we provided them all of the information that has been culmination of all of the work and all of the engagement and activities that we have done in the past 10 months, in which along the way, each of these groups were also asked their priorities, including the site committees that were formed at each of the school sites by the school principals that encompass not only staff as well as teachers and key students as well as faculty there, as well as some of the other groups along the way. And I'm going to walk through the summary of their priorities as well, so that you also have this information before you prioritize today. Okay, so at the community town hall that Rick had mentioned, the last one, we asked the community members that participate in that to also prioritize. And the things that rose up to the top, as you can see up there, were the physical education facilities at the high school, the drop-off and parking and fencing improvements that has a lot to do with the safety, as well as modernization of the older existing classrooms, a lot of need there. And then tied for fourth place, that was kind of a close runners up, were student dining facility improvements, food service and kitchen areas, as well as, replacing the portables with new construction for TK and kinder classrooms that have proper facilities, support facilities such as restrooms, as well as expanding the play yard to be able to accommodate that grade level onto the elementary school campuses. Okay. The surveys that was sent out in terms of the student survey overall, and many of the high school students participated in the survey. The things that that rose to the top as top needs at the school sites really focused on classrooms, general improvements to the campus grounds, outdoor learning areas, restrooms, as well as some of the elective type of spaces there. And then again, the play fields and hardcore areas. Okay. In terms of top facility needs for the survey, they went out to the community that included parents, teachers, and staff members. Overall, in terms, I split the survey in terms of just analyzing the data. High school, since the high school has so many different needs from the rest of the middle and the elementary school campus, and that's why you see two columns there. So overall, in terms of priorities, were restrooms, food service, cafeteria, general classrooms, PE athletic spaces, outdoor spaces such as the hard courts, and then the auditorium and performing arts upgrades. And then at the high school, it was the PE facilities, restrooms, athletic spaces that were outdoors in terms of the play fields, general classroom improvements, and then as well as food service and cafeteria needs. Okay. And then some of the free response comments here, I'll just highlight some of them. You can read them also on your own in the handout that was provided. More outdoor shade, that was all across the board. Age appropriate restrooms for the TK and kinder facilities, improvement of indoor spaces in terms of air purification needs. Valentine needs a cafeteria. Fixing all the leaky roofs, ceilings, and musty classrooms, especially at the portables and the bungalows. So that's something that was kind of also reflected in the information that Joy also provided, or I'm sorry, the FM3 survey here. So these ones I think were already presented at a previous board meeting. It's just a summary of the FM3 survey that went out to the greater community here beyond the school community. And the things that really rose up to the top were, again, the fix-it items, classrooms, labs, technology items, CTE, college and career readiness spaces, and then basic repairs really rose up to the top. Okay, so I won't present all of these. The next group of slides are about each of the school sites. At the top there in blue, I have highlighted what rose to the top in terms of what the FAC prioritized and how that kind of applies to each of the school sites. And then down below in two separate categories are what was prioritized in the community town hall priorities. And then at the bottom there is what the school site communities prioritized. And then I've highlighted or starred at the top there some of the ones that correlated with each other. For example, here at the San Marino High School, the priorities from the FAC include the repairing and modernizing of existing classrooms and restrooms that had the most need, safety and security items, site utilities, technology, and then CTE improvements to the CTE career tech spaces. And so some of the modernization items were mentioned down below, as well as work at the CTE building. So those things sort of correlated with the other stakeholders' priorities there. Any questions so far? It's like a lot of information. Okay, if not, we can keep going. The rest of these slides are, I won't go over them too much, but just so you know what's in them. This is the existing plan and some of the challenges of each of the school sites. For example, on the San Marino High School, there is a fault line towards near the gym facility as cutting across like the fields, that area. So that's sort of a constraint that sort of you have to work around. Some of the buildings are also categorized on DSA's list of AB 300. So if work were to be done on those buildings, then the district potentially would need to spend money to be able to structurally upgrade those facilities as well. Okay. Right. This is just some material from part of our process, some images we took on our site walks, as well as workshops we held with Gil and his group, and maintenance in terms of identification of needs all across the board on all of the school sites. And you can see sort of like a heat map here where all of the red dots represent all of the areas where things are at the end of their life cycle, things are in need of repair, systems that need to be fixed, stormwater issues. All of those were identified and captured as part of this comprehensive plan. Okay, just some images of existing conditions. Right, and so Huntington Middle School, FAC priorities included, again, modernization, safety and security, site utilities, technology, and student support and counseling. And then some of the things that correlated with the other group's priorities included modernization and repairs of the older classroom wings, and then also site utilities, which is also part of modernization. Typically, you would kind of do that work along with modernization, since you might have the ground already dug up or some of the walls already opened up, and so you would be updating some of the pipes and infrastructure in there. So that makes sense. Which is there. Some of the top needs that were identified by the site committee here. And then for Carver Elementary, the FAC prioritized here, again, modernization for the existing classrooms, safety and security, which had a little bit to do with their drop off, as well as maybe widening up that area where the kindergarten, south of the kindergarten playground is to provide an actual waiting area for students to be picked up or dropped off. And then the site utilities and technology upgrades, exterior play spaces and play fields, improvements to those areas, additional play structure for that site. New construction to replace the portables and build new TK classrooms to accommodate that grade level, and then the student support and counseling spaces there. Some of the need that was identified, some images, and then some of the needs that were identified from the site committee there. And then finally, Valentine Elementary School, obviously, it was mentioned in the FAC that with the last bond, Carver received a little bit more than Valentine. So that's why you kind of see a little bit more focused on some of the FAC priorities here for this particular school site. Again, modernization of existing classroom spaces, reconfiguration of the existing NPR to an actual library space, safety and security, site utilities, technology, a new NPR and food service for this school site, so they don't have to share with Huntington, improvements to the hard courts and play fields, as well as the new construction for classrooms to replace the portables and provide the TK grade level. Okay, and then as you can see, a lot of the FAC priorities really overlapped with the priorities that were at the town hall, as well as the site committee priorities. Okay. All right, and I'm going to let Rick walk through some of the total program needs as well as some of the funding analysis.
So this may be some of the more interesting part of the day here. We talk about dollars and costs and everything. So I know Jim ran through a lot of information there across the sites, and hopefully we can help answer questions when we get into the later parts of the prioritization, because there's a lot of information there, a lot of meetings and things went in together and all that, all those prioritizations. So we're going to talk about the total number. So all those school site diagrams that you saw were given to our cost estimator. We went through a process with our estimator where we actually do literal takeoffs of all the different categories. How big are the buildings, the particular fields, and amount of hard courts. And we put together a fairly detailed cost estimate that our estimator does for us, pretty much have been doing for many, many years. They have very good database, so they understand what true costs are just based on something as basic as a master plan diagram. So that's one of the things that they do well. And when they do these estimates, it's important to understand what's in the estimate as much as it is to understand what's not in the estimate. So I'm going to go through some some details about the dollars a bit. So the estimates are based on all the maintenance repairs, all the things identified in the assessments and the diagrams. The program needs, the new construction was identified. So Joe May put together detailed programs for the building, so we knew exactly how much square feet each new building was. So that all got incorporated into the estimates. The estimates include construction costs plus soft costs, and the soft costs are the things that you would need to do in addition to the construction piece, which would be all the fees you would pay, the AE services, all the architecture, engineering, design fees, the fees you pay to Division of the State Architect, all the inspection fees, all those things that go along with putting a project together. And the construction cost is really the amount of dollars that you would agree to, say, on bid day for the whole project, the general conditions, the general contractor's costs, all that together. So those are all included in these numbers, and the construction numbers are escalated through the year 2024. So in other words, there isn't future escalation added to these dollars. And the reason is because it's an unknown how you might escalate the dollars in the future, because not knowing which projects would occur when. So it really wouldn't be useful to try to even predict that. So everything's on 2024 dollars. So some of the things excluded are that escalation. There's things that are unknowns at the time, like if there's city fees, utility hookups, things like that, offsite costs beyond the property line of the district. Those are not included. There's some things, hazardous abatement for some of the buildings that are a little bit unknown. There's a little bit of assumptions put into the estimates, but there's things that might go beyond that. Just things that are just unknown until you do a very detailed survey. So those are not included in the estimate. And then there's a pretty big category that when you embark on a project, if you're going to do, say, a modernization program, you likely might need to have temporary housing or interim housing. Depending on how you phase the project, what the specific site is, you might have a row of interim housing, you might have 2 rows, you might want to do a more aggressive, less phases of construction, but more interim housing. So the costs of that are not included in these cost estimates either. But there's a way that we can accomplish all those or understand the costs of all these things that are excluded, so you can have a realistic picture and be able to predict and have what we like to say is an implementable plan. Because you want to make sure that this end of the day, we deliver this final plan to you, it's implementable, and that the costs that you prioritize can actually be accomplished through the life of your bond program. Yeah, is there any questions about just the nature? Yes.
I do. Do we know what shape the soil is in? Like, have we done a phase one lately or? I mean,
We do not actually. We,
okay.
so that's a really good point, that we base things on kind of normal conditions, and there are sometimes there's some extraordinary conditions that would require additional strengthening of your soil. Those kinds of things are not in the typical estimates. There is a little bit of a contingency though that are built into the numbers that would accomplish some of that. But if there was some extraordinary thing,
Well, like there was a gas station on the corner at Carver.
yeah, okay, so that would fall into that category of hazardous materials and a
Right.
soil cleanup and abatement. So that would fall into this other category that we'll talk about how that can be incorporated into your plan based on a lot of past experience of these programs being implemented across many school districts. So, but that is not in the dollars we'll talk about. Yes.
Hi, you mentioned about temporary housing during construction. So is the idea that construction will take place while school is in session, or is it during the summer, or has that been?
I think the first approach is always if you have some types of projects that you can accomplish over a summer, you try to do that. But for the types of plans that we're putting together, if you're to do a new building, for example, it's usually about a year long for even a modest building for construction. So you're going to have year-round construction. And you're going to have contractors and people that will fence off the area and make it safe and secure. But the assumption is that your kids are going to have to go to school every day. There is an occasional district, I'll give you an example, like Anaheim Elementary School, where they've got literally an empty elementary school district, elementary school. And when they do work at an elementary school, they relocate that whole entire school to this temporary school. And then they can do all the construction in one single phase, but that's very rare. So interim housing would be if you're going to modernize a wing of classrooms, it's going to be fairly destructive to go in there. You have to take down wall ceilings, put in all the utilities and things like that. So you're going to have to move those kids into temporary portable classrooms, usually for about a 6+ month period to do a modernization piece. And then what happens is those kids go back into their classrooms, and then the next wing would then go into those temporary housing. So you might end up with a 2+ year construction. So it is something to be aware of, that doing significant work. And if you remember back even at Huntington, building that gym building, probably, I think that took a good 1.5+ just to construct that.
And so, further on the housing, with the modernization that will occur, has there been analysis on whether capacity would be increased? Because I know there's a mention about building for the TK and how pre-K will be mandatory in a few years. So is there an analysis of how many more students we can house?
Yes, so that was demographic survey was really important input into the program. We worked with Dr. Lynn about making sure we understood what the goals were for enrollments at each of the school sites. So we aligned the enrollment with the number of classrooms, including bringing in a TK. There was a certain amount of math that went into predicting over the years what your TK program might look like and how many kids that would require and how many classrooms are associated with that program. So that's all been incorporated into the plan.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it is usually we take a very conservative approach.
Yeah.
So even if your projections show a fairly, like in some cases, a fairly steep decline, that didn't mean that we planned for that decline. The plan is more conservative, where I think for the most part, we try to assume things were going to stay kind of level. And then if things do move down, then you can kind of change the program a bit. And there would be maybe some savings in cost if that were to happen.
Yeah, my question related to what Mrs. Lamb just brought up. I mean, having looks like 10 sections of TK. I think doesn't that we already at capacity at the elementary, so that seems like it's increasing, but our capacity at the other schools are finite. So I'm just wondering how that math works.
So at the elementaries, you're saying that.
I'm
yeah,
saying every seat's full right now.
Right. So there is an increase. We're not, right? Is that fair to say that there's a
I mean,
growth?
10 sections, just see, how many do we have now?
We have two at each school.
Okay. So we want
It-
5 at each school? That's what the plan says, 5 at each school.
So there's an increase, right, because by 2025. Like, everybody that's qualified to be able to be a TK student will be able to come to school, and so essentially the number of classes match the number of K students, right? And then strictly, in terms of, you know, the growth, like, as we make sure to go beyond elementary school, we did have, like, the South Park middle school, we have identified additional teaching stations there, so we did say, I know that for this district, there is that issue where there's a drop off, right, where students are shooting, and so we identified that as an optional, in expansion. That additional teaching stations are accommodating that, so, get that up.
I don't know if that answered your question, but
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, are the trends actually trending up for enrollment? I mean, I would love to retain everybody and get more, but it seems like we have pretty, I don't know if we've reached our reach is what I'm saying. So.
yeah, I don't think we're planning on a growth, but I think there is a plan that TK could grow, because right now.
We're gonna have younger students in school
Yeah.
than we've had in the past, because the new laws are requiring us to enroll and accept students who are younger and younger through 25-26, right? And Dr. Richter can speak to that sliding scale.
Yeah.
25-26, all 4-year-olds will be eligible for kinder. We have to turn 5 by September 1st.
And those children previously were not in our schools. They were attending preschools. And so that will cause us to have, you know, growth at the
At that level.
primary grades, yes.
There's another thing at work too, because when we walked the sites and looked at the use of all the facilities, Jermaine mentioned there's one category that is doing these learning centers where you might have a suite that has a psych office, a speech office. Right now, if there happen to be, say, an empty classroom, they might park a psych teacher in an entire classroom. So if we can find a space to be a little more efficient, then that kind of frees up existing space. So those kinds of things we're taking into consideration as well, just to make sure we're efficient, and because that just happens if, you know, declining enrollment never means empty classrooms. You'll never find it on any school site where there's an empty space. There's always a use for it, but that doesn't mean it's the highest and best use for that space. So we try to incorporate that too.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll keep going here. So here's just a real quick summary of the scope categories, and this is the total cost then that was identified in the entire plan. And we'll go through these categories again in detail, because these will be the building blocks that you'll be using to do your prioritization. But as you can see across the categories from A to N, total need in 2024 dollars is $338 million essentially for all 4 school sites. So it's, as you can see, it's not insubstantial.
So the number 337 million, this is the new number, right? So based on the meeting conclusion and also the expectation of the
337,000 or million, excuse me, $337 million figure
Mhm.
is the total cost of everything included in the facilities master plan.
Mhm.
But that amount is not within our bonding capacity, and
Mhm.
Kijit will be speaking to that issue after this presentation is over. So
Okay.
that's, and I will say that school districts, and I've talked to all of my counterparts about this who have done bonds in the past or are planning to do bonds. And no district ever fully implements their facilities master plan. It is a vision for the school district's future. And so it typically does not get implemented with one bond. And so this is the the maximum amount of the cost of everything that was included in what really needs to be done within the district. But that is a separate amount from what we have the capacity to acquire through a bond.
Okay, I think it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So then the ratio will just find a big donor, right? Or
Yes.
other than
We're gonna start playing the lottery. Build that into our budget, all right?
Absolutely.
We're going for mega millions here.
I have a question about the 300, basically 38 million. So as Dr. De La Torre said, you never fully implement it. And the idea is that another funding round would come in at some point to pick up what we need. But isn't that going to then increase as the years push out too? So what would the term be for, we can sort of
Yeah, we usually think
envision that for, is what I'm saying, until we need to then do another one to push it out again?
yes, that's a great question, because usually we think of these as about like a 10-year life to them. It could be longer, 15, some of their boats. So when I get to the slide that speaks to how you want to understand that in context of a 10 to 15-year plan, it's a lot bigger number. So that doesn't mean you can just pass a bond for a certain amount and chip away at that number one for one. So you don't, so we'll talk about that in a bit. And, but that's a good point. And again, Dr. De La Torre mentioned is really important to understand is that this isn't meant to be, here's what you guys can implement on your, with a bond measure. This is a long-term vision. So when you start doing individual projects, you know that it's in context with this better vision for the campus. So if you put a new TK building down, that that that's going to fit within a general plan later. So when you do other work, or that you might have to do some electrical upgrades to incorporate some new construction, or it's meant to be part of a long vision, which this plan will give for you in the future. And some districts, it depends on timing. Sometimes what we try to do is give you a plan and have you prioritize on some conservative measures. That doesn't mean the economy might get favorable and you can do more. Other districts have gotten well beyond that initial number. Other times, not so much, but you want to be able to make a promise to the voters and say, these are the projects we can do. And then when I say this is an implementable program, that you can deliver those projects. So what we're trying to help you do is prioritize a list of scopes that can be implemented based on kind of typical escalation rates that you would experience across, say, a 10 or 12-year period, given that sometimes that escalation might be really steep and then it'll level off, it might drop. So across time, you will see that kind of regular, it's usually like 4 to 5% per year. Now, during COVID, we had about a 12% in one single year of escalation. So that would have been a very challenging year to try to do work, but that's already behind us now. So we don't have to deal with those kinds of steep increases.
So with this number, I don't see the auditorium, right?
Okay, well, you will. I'll show you where that's at. So it's in there, but so these are and that when we describe A to N in detail, you'll see where the scope categories are. So the first category is repairing, modernize, and reconfigure any classroom. That's one of the biggest numbers for 45 million. Another big number is the new construction category, which is replacing the portables and building the TK. That's 45 million. And then you can see that's one of the biggest number. And that one is, I'll explain later, that is singular to San Marino High School. That's the physical education athletics improvements. That's building the brand new gyms, lockers, and I think aquatics is in there too, right? So that's one single very large project that's represented there. So, but having it separated out allows you to think about how you want to prioritize that. So it's not part of another category. So we'll get into each of these in general, but this just gives you an idea of how these dollars, how the 338 million kind of are spread across all these categories. And then these will be, and then we'll show you another way to look at that. So we're going to show you the same categories by school site as well. That will help inform your decision. So, but again, more about the funding. So we talk about dollars that you have to spend funding. We've talked a lot about the GEO bond, but you also have other funds available. There's local funding measures that you have money in the bank for, so to speak. And I think Joy mentioned the state may likely have a bond on the ballot this fall. And you have some eligibility to be able to tap into some of those state dollars. You only get access to those state dollars if you have a local bond to match those dollars. So if you don't, if the state passes their bonds and you say you have, and we'll get into how much eligibility you have, you can't just get that money from the state unless you have your own pot to match that dollar amount. So there's a certain leverage there that you can get. And then the last category is voter approved general obligation bond that we talked about. So here's the way the funding will work. And this is kind of our tried and true process to capture all those things that I said weren't in that dollar amount. So this is basically the analysis of all the funding. So again, the total FMP need at the very top is the 338 million. The district, we asked Dr. Lynn to give us kind of a listing of all the different funds that you have currently that could be applied to some of these programs. So you've got about, trying to read this right, about $1.8 million or $1.9 million in developer fees. Then you have another general fund deferred maintenance dollars, about $1 million. You have another 900 and some thousand in what's called Fund 25 balance. You've got the eligibility we talked about from the state. So you have state dollars that you could potentially get 2.7 million. And there's another. Yeah, and then 5.7 for modernization. So you've got some dollars that you could potentially get from the state. And then the amount of money that I think Keegan will get into in terms of the potential general obligation bond was identified to be 200 million. So altogether, and then you have to pay off a COP. So if you put all that together, you've got total potential funding of 206 million. Now, unfortunately, you can't just take that 206 and say you can spend all that towards your 338 million, because the way you have to be able to have a implementable roadmap in the future is you have to take the total need or the total funds available and only spend 2/3 of those dollars. That last third of your pie, that third of your pie goes to all those things that were not in your cost estimate. So we know that if you only have if you can have just 2/3 of the dollars available and apply those across all your projects, that through the 10+ years of escalation, plus potential interim housing costs and offsite things, and maybe some unforeseens with soils and things like that, you'll need about 1/3 of those dollars. So with that in mind, you would have a pretty good implementable roadmap then. So what that means is your total funds that you can prioritize to apply towards your total need is 138,457,000. Yeah. Right. So yeah, basically. No, we're just rounding it up to 140 million. So you've got about 140 million to apply towards the 338 million. And that actually is a ratio is pretty good across a lot of different master plans that we do for a lot of school districts, where many times the need can be sometimes quarter or even 5 times the need. We've seen some extraordinary cases where districts haven't been doing much projects, or they haven't passed a bond in many, many years. Their need is so much that they just don't even, can't really accomplish a whole lot from their local bond measure. So you're actually in a pretty good position to accomplish quite a bit of work for, based on the dollars that are represented here. So that's, I think.
By the way, for the first one, the developer fee, do you think should be more? Because you divide to 10 years. So actually only 190,000 per year collection. You think should be with final ADU or high density permission? So then where more permits come out, right, from city.
Hopefully it will be more, but this is quite conservative. It's based on past numbers.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we'll keep going here because it's already 5, and I know we got a bit to go.
Today we'll be asking you to charge up to the $140 million number, which is kind of a very common spot.
So these are all the scope categories again, and we're going to just pause on each one of these. And again, you have these at your dais as well there to be able to follow along.
Cheat sheet too.
Yeah.
If you want to refer.
So scope category A is the repair, modernize, and reconfigure, which is just modernizing existing classrooms and doing all the things that you would do, including systems, HVAC, electrical, those kinds of things. Category D is all the infrastructure, site utilities that typically are in your site underground, such as sewer pipes, storm drain, those kinds of things. Then category C is new construction, which typically is building the new TK and building a new classroom building would then allow you to remove the portables and, you know, ensuring that we've got the right classroom count. So that whole category is based on new construction. Category D is dedicated to elementary schools, STEM and art, music classroom scopes.
Auditorium improvement will be encompassed in this category.
Yes. The auditorium and things that are more,
Papa.
those kinds of VAPA type programs. And then at the middle and high school, it's also the elective CTE, career tech and performing arts. Then category E is student dining, food service, NPR and food service. And it could either be whether you're getting a new one at Valentine or maybe just doing some modernization and expanding your food service facilities at the other schools as well. So, and then your multi-purpose rooms. Then category F is modernizing and reimagining your libraries. G is student support services. We mentioned that learning center, which would incorporate counselors, psych and speech and have those reflect the actual need at each of the school sites and be designed intently for those uses as opposed to just being in some inefficient spaces. Category H is all the things that would be part of the staff support areas and administration and staff spaces. I is the one that's again dedicated to the high school. It's the gym, locker rooms, fitness at the high school, the PE athletic support spaces. So you can see replacing the gyms and building new aquatics. That's a category in itself. J is all things relative to safety and security, including things like fencing and drop-offs and lighting and door locks and fire alarms in this category as well, right? Oh, fire is a modernization, right?
It's a big number in I think a lot of this looks like it's really bad about leveraging technology to
Okay, and K is your outdoor learning environments and quads, just doing things, improvements to the outdoor spaces. L is more about the outdoor play spaces, play fields and hard courts. M is all by itself. It's a next generation flexible furniture. So it's providing that furniture that can really make the spaces work from an educational standpoint. And then N is technology, equipment and infrastructure, just making sure you've got state of the art in terms of all your tech equipment and your backbone and making sure your fiber is up to today's standards and things like that. So that's the categories. Now we're going to talk about the actual activity. Do you want to pause on anything yet so far in terms of the different categories? But we're going to have you take those categories and we've got an activity where we've got literally pieces on Velcro that reflect the dollar amounts. Yes.
Did you put these in any specific order?
No,
Nope.
they're not in any specific order. Yeah, they're just kind of.
That's the kind of the template that our estimator uses. They tend to categorize things in those categories, but we have those categories, not just district wide, but you'll see in the boards that if it's what category are you holding in your hand? Is that?
Exterior play field and hardcore.
So you don't have to necessarily just take that whole category and stick it up on the board. We've got scissors. You can cut just by school sites. So you can say, okay, we just want to do that to 2 elementary schools. And you can clip out the elementaries and put those up, and then you can test different scenarios. So the thermometer goes all the way up to 140 million. And that would be your kind of top tier projects that you think are the highest priorities. And then if you're on the fence on some things, you can then add a couple things that could be like a tier 2 if you like the FAC group decided to have kind of a tier 2 category list as well. So
Excuse me.
So go ahead.
I have a very quick question regarding the estimation. Is there like a further breakdown of how each category came out to the final numbers, like how we got to 40?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a copy here today. It's a detailed cost estimate of each site,
Right.
each category with the takeoffs and the square feet and all that. So it's actually, I know these are these really big numbers we're throwing at you, but there's actually a lot of detail that went into it.
I
Sounds
think
good.
it's available in the FAC shared folder.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. And I just want the board to be aware that during the FAC study, we did look at various things we could pull out that we may be asking PTA or the affiliates or other people to also help us, and then looking at grants. So everything, like, I'm just gonna give it, for example, like the next generation flexible furnitures, we probably can fundraise for that and not be part of this master plan, because when we're looking at facilities, we want to make sure that we're putting the brick and mortar down and all of the infrastructure that's important. And then all the nice things like furniture, carpet, or decoration, paint, that kind of stuff can come later in terms of some other funding source. And so make sure that we understand that, as well as if we're looking in terms of equity, we want to make sure that each school does get something along those lines. So if we're looking at infrastructure with restrooms and, you know, that, we want to make sure that it's across the 4 sites, and not only the high school gets the restrooms made up, but also, you know, the TKs, because we have different restrictions on TK restrooms. So as we go 2 months younger by next year, when we're taking the TKs, we have to understand that they just can't go to a 5th grader's bathroom, that there are, you know, ed codes against that. So we have to make sure certain things are in place if we're to capture the money that's coming that way. So I just wanted the board to know that there were some details that were discussed, and that is for your consideration as well.
I had a question regarding the 200 million. So I think this is a question for Keegan. So what's the thought process behind 200 million being the maximum capacity, and how many years is that?
Is he gonna present? Are you gonna present on that? Because, and then take a pause on this, what we're doing here. Mhm.
So that's based on.
From the mic. Yeah, we're viewers at home.
Good evening. So the $200 million is based off of a certain set of assumptions. Your current bond tax rate is at, it's in the $63 level, and that will fully disappear in 2 fiscal years' time. So we're in 23-24. 24-25 is the final year of that tax, and after that, there will be no more bond taxes. So $200 million would extend or continue a $60 rate, which is the limit under Proposition 39 for unified school districts. So under a $60 extension tax rate and financing terms up to about 30 years, which would give us a total election tax of 33 years, we're able to generate $200 million under the assumption of conservative interest rates and conservative assessed valuation growth assumptions.
Thank you.
Are we able to go to 40? And how much more would that even garner us? Or do we even qualify for that?
I'm sorry.
A 40-year repayment?
Yes, you could go to up to 40 years. That does become almost prohibitively expensive and does limit us being able to stay below the $60 tax rate limit because of how high the interest cost is.
Okay, thank you.
So that's our maximum. Yeah. Right.
Now, that's a maximum under reasonable assumptions.
Right.
For example, if you were to say, under that single $60 tax rate, extended tax rate limit, what would it take to generate $337 million? Today's interest rates, if you were to issue bonds, would be about 4.5%. You would need interest rates to be at 4% for the life of the bond program, so below where we currently are. And under the $200 million, we're assuming assessed valuation growth of 4.5%. That's below your historic average of between 5.5% to 6%. To generate 337 million, your assessed value would need to grow at 6.5% annually for the next 30 years. So you would need below market interest rates and above market historical growth rates.
So this is just the safe number to go with.
It's a very reasonable and conservative number.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, well, we did want to allow you about 30 minutes or so to do the activity. And what I would suggest is maybe you elect somebody to be the person that can kind of help put up the, like test different scenarios with building the 140 million thermometer. And we can help with that too. We can help cut out scenarios or answer questions as you go, but it's kind of meant to be an active activity or get off your feet maybe and just take a look and start writing some thoughts. And maybe you already have in your mind some first tier priorities that you'd like to put up.
I think it's important to use the FAC prioritization as a guideline as well. Since they have spent so much time on it and dug into it so much.
Can we start with, can we start with the basics? So I guess that would be A and B. Repair, modernize,
So yeah,
configure.
Let me get a visual because you can see this is all 4 school sites
Mhm.
and San Marino is about this much of this group. But in terms of repair, modernize, all the existing classrooms, the rest, we just kind of.
Yeah, that's true.
I have 2 questions regarding that then. Number one, does that take into account, do all of these numbers take into account any work we've performed this year or are slated to perform in the next year? Like, for example, the technology had the cameras, but now we got the grant. So have we adjusted some of those numbers?
Yeah, we tried to incorporate any work that was already spoken for, so to speak, or funded outside of future bond would already been shown as work that's been done.
Okay, so like the new cameras that we're getting with the DOJ grant, that's not included in this technology number? Or it is?
It depends because the grant that we received is good for 3 years, right? So the cameras are good for 3 years, but over the life of this particular bond, I assume it's more than 3 years, so the need would be there still.
So to some extent, some of these numbers also incorporate the concept of not just what's immediately in front of us, but what might be coming 5, 10, 15 down the line to some extent.
Yes, I mean, things evolve and, if some of the projects, this is just step one in terms of just kind of putting a bow on a master plan is finding out what your priorities are. The implementation step would be, say, once your bond passes and you want to now start engaging projects, you want to start making a decision, okay, what's our highest priority? We want to start Valencia or Valentino, we want to start, at Huntington, or we want to do some work at the high school, we want to do like some summer projects across all school sites and do like some technology work, and that'd be the next step. And if things are going to happen later in the program, then the needs might be tweaked a little bit at that time. You might find that things evolve. That's just part of the process.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is comprehensive and really really, so it's not just the immediate need that was identified. So for example, upgrades to the entire fiber and backbone of the technology system that's taken into consideration. Years out, that's gonna have to be a lot more robust than we've got today, right? To be able to explore. Maybe each student has like 3 or 4 devices that they need to access, and it's not just one. Right? Yeah.
Okay.
It's just give you an idea, like I'm sure you've had these conversations amongst your peers about other school districts. Like I give an example of Downey Unified School District where they just passed a recent bond, and their previous bond, they focused on all their middle schools. They had 3 or 4 middle schools, and they did pretty much exclusively all the work at the middle schools. The bond before that, they did a lot of work at the high school. So the current bond they're doing now, they're trying to now take on all their elementary schools. That was just their approach. I mean, there's all different means and methods, but some districts take that approach.
And you have those numbers, I thought, broken out, like if we did a thermometer for each school site, like you just spoken.
They're all here, so that's why we kind of encourage you to.
Yeah, but if you stack up, can we stack them all?
So you can
Can we
see.
have 4 stacks and see what they look like? No, but you get what I'm saying, because
Like,
then.
what are the total
Yeah,
needs
because
at
then
one
we're
site
like-
versus another site?
And then, because you're also gonna do projects that go hand in hand, you know,
Right.
you can't just say like, I don't know, we're gonna do.
Because we want to build consensus, and since Ms. Chong brought up the A, which is the repair, is everybody in consensus that that's what we want up there right now?
Yes.
Okay,
I agree, yeah.
and then, next,
Site utilities next, I would
yes,
say.
so if we're looking at B, is there anybody who wants to add anything or make a statement, or are we in agreement with B as well?
I think what we're looking at too is, I mean, we are going no frills in order to meet that 140. So we have
Correct,
to
but
do-
I want to build
but-
consensus with
yeah.
our group so that Joanna, Joseph, everybody says, yeah, I've thought about it. This is the way in which we're gonna
Yeah.
go with B.
I think that like if you're gonna modernize and repair, then the site utilities kind of flow together with that.
We're all in agreement.
Concede.
All right, anyone want to throw up the third item that you guys want us to consider?
Well, I'd like to say technology in that that'll be fiber in the ground and service to the buildings, which is not included in site utilities, but is somewhat of a utility.
The N, yeah, the N is there.
Yeah, but they could go in the same trenches too, right?
Yeah.
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 We have breaking it down so that you are able to.
So that's A,
You know
A,
what,
B. Or is it
uh,
A, B,
my-
and N?
My question
Yes.
to both of you, because you are architect, can you help us to understand? Because right now I have a 14 item, right? Just like if we build up the basic, and some can be like if we don't do right away, but later they can like isolate, and then for the fundraising or for someone want to donate, that and not cause the interruption about the whole
Like a standalone project.
yeah. So you think even the 14 and then inside can be have a
In terms of like trying to do separately or fundraise, but I think the furniture was a good one.
yeah.
Most of the other things, we have to raise separately and try to do small little new projects. This pretty much all the other work would require going to the Division State Architect that you want to include with the program. So, unless you did fundraising for, individual elements that could help maybe reduce the cost of some of these things, like I was something mentioned carpet. But the carpeting is really already embedded into the modernization costs, but that doesn't mean you couldn't stretch those dollars more by saying, hey, if we've got somebody to donate or to fund the carpet separately.
Like one of the see that there, tier 1 was like up to the 140 mark, right? And then, but then they had this tier 2, which was like their kind of like things they really thought if there was extra money, they really would like to do, right? And that would be tier 2. And so, for example, you can think of it that way where if some of these things were to be cut out because you're able to fundraise some of these projects that are within these bar, right? Then you would just get to more of the tier 2 items, right?
Mhm.
So, but today, this is one big picture,
Yeah.
right?
So for me, it's really important to have safety and security at all 4 sites. That is the number one concern of all parents. It doesn't matter what we're doing with technology or furniture or the playground space if the child is not safe. So I would recommend that we get Jay on the board somehow.
And again, if looking at things like the voter survey that, I think a lot of their things that resonated mostly were the repair, modernization, and safety security. So you captured kind of the communities needs by these two elements.
Yes. I agree with,
Yeah.
agree with,
Yeah,
agree
number
with
three.
Jay.
J.
Oh, number three is technology.
Technology, N,
And
A, B, so we have A, B, N.
Well, would we not move J
Okay.
before technology then?
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
No,
at
it
this point?
don't
It's just
matter.
all-
It's
oh,
not-
okay,
it's
it's just
just
in the
trying to
tier
put
one.
it together,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Everything is considered to be.
Shuffle around later, because maybe it's, easier just to build it first and then, there are some that are really rise to top and you can put towards the bottom. So there's-
But we'll do construction scheduling and like all of that, we don't need to get caught in the weeds.
Yeah, then you
Just to give you a snapshot, a very, blunt, it's kind of a blunt tool to say.
Yeah.
All of these are kind of things that you can do within your program. Another example of how you can maybe stretch your dollars, if you look at the modernizing and repair of classrooms, this amount is San Marino High School. And if you feel that maybe San Marino High School has already had some new construction and they're in better shape, you could even just say, we're just gonna assign 50% of the dollars, which is 20 million. We're just gonna give San Marino 10 million to do modernization and be selective about what they modernize. So we can think of it that way as well.
got the FAA shows the modernization. Cut the modernization of the high school in half and really just target the more the more immediate needs.
Yeah.
Right.
And you don't have to decide what those immediate needs are, but you can just say, we prioritize, the greatest need, and maybe you say, and those are just the classrooms, that doesn't even include the
Auditorium.
auditorium, the modernizing the auditorium, things like that, so that's a separate number.
Okay.
And then same with, you could look at it in terms of NPR food service student dining. You can see each one has their own piece. You could say, well, we're gonna do the elementary school sites and maybe the other sites we'll do later, or, it's a little more enlightening. Maybe you can see it from your table there, but it gives you a little better idea of the breakdown between school sites about how much of each category takes place.
I think the next one should be the multi-purpose room and food service one. Having our students dine more comfortably, more food storage space, and Valentine needing that type of need as well.
But that 29 million is not all Valentine. That's
No,
all-
it's
that's
not, yeah,
That's all.
right,
separate
it's
things,
everyone,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
it's everyone.
San Marino High School is about 3.2 million, Huntington Middle School is 5 million.
Right, those were just modernizations.
Carver's about 10 million, but but that's modernization, right?
Modernization, but then reconfiguration of their serving lines to better the flow, and then
Yeah.
also a larger lunch shelter to
Yeah.
accommodate the covered dining area.
For the dining area, right now, San Marino High School, they have dining area, so you think the existing the building will be, I think,
Necessary.
redo or
I think
It's
this is the
actually
part
not
where we
a lot
can
of
cut.
dollars. It's probably more for the food service, maybe a little
The
more
kitchen or
like
something.
expansion of the kitchen area, maybe, I think that,
It's just basic
Like,
modernization.
yeah, basic modernization, so like,
so just the inside is not touched for the building, right?
exactly, yeah.
So the FAC recommended just Valentine. I don't know what the consensus is on that.
Because they don't even have an NPR, I think was their logic.
They have nothing.
Carver's
Right.
is still in
They
pretty
don't
good shape, they have
have
nothing, so.
Yeah.
So that's a nice way to look at it.
So, does this E for Valentine cover, it covers the NPR and food services, but does it also include like
The lunch.
yeah?
Yes.
And do we have it pulled out how much just a lunch shelter would be at Carver too?
We have a breakdown.
It's like a lot. Oh,
So the multipurpose and food service at Valentine is 8.435.
it's 8.5.
Yeah, and then Carver's lunch multipurpose and food service, 7.268. So 7.
Six.
Doesn't seem like Harvard's in bad shape. It's Valentine, but it costs just
So
as
that's
much.
basically 16 million, I know, right? And
Right?
Valentine gets a
That's
brand new
Valentine, yeah, they're gonna get something brand new and Carver's gonna.
But Carver got a lot of work in 2000.
But why did they
It's still
still need?
7 million?
I think this idea is that it would be expanded because the lunch court area is not large enough. So right now they're in 3 shifts for feeding the kids. So they overlap and stagger them and then, and it's all a maximum capacity thing. So I think the idea was if you expanded the lunch court, then you can probably drop down to 2 shifts is my guess.
And also, it's a little tricky at Carver. It's not just like I can add a little piece to extend the current one. You would have to tear down the
It is all new
existing one.
construction.
It's all one new one, and you have to regrade that because it's a very steep slope. We're now coming into the lunch area, so it's almost like a redo grading and all that stuff.
Which they're asking for in the new hard court surfaces, basically. That's included in there, right? The asphalt at Carver.
I think that's the outdoor play.
That's the outdoor play.
Yeah, because that's a separate line item, but yet if we do one, they overlap there.
Not totally. That area doesn't
Yeah.
have a lot of play area because it's on a slope. So
No.
right now they're not really playing in that.
If they do all new construction at the Carver eating area, isn't that asphalt right outside of it?
Yeah,
The
but
little
that's not
part-
really
yeah,
used.
The little part outside of it, you would have to regrade that to be flat, so it'd be flat area for them to eat, right, where the lunch tables, it will expand out. So yes, that portion would be
Okay,
included.
but not like that.
Yeah, it's not like we'll just put a lunch shelter and then the other part, half of it's inaccessible because it's this really steep, so yes.
It's about 2.2 million total, just the lunch shelter, the demolition plus the construction of the new lunch shelter and all that is what that would equate
Oh.
to Harvard. So you could,
You have to add a little site work to that too.
yeah, so.
If we do like 10 to Valentine
Yeah.
Carver total,
Right? Like, cause I don't, 7 million for Carver.
coming from a Carver mom.
Coming from a Carver mom. It's reasonable.
It's like,
Well, maybe we circle back around to cutting things.
Yeah, I feel like
We need to going through anything else. that-
Or just put it on this.
cut them later, you know, we could fill this first and then adjust.
I'm guessing we're gonna end up like towards the top of the bulletin board by the time we're done, and then we're gonna have to cut. Yeah, and then we'll have to cut each of those colors down or
It's all
something.
really nice.
Just to give you an idea, this is just San Marino High School's gym and aquatics. Center.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like, it's a lot there.
And could, for the gym and aquatic center, I know it's been separated and I know it's a big chunk of the total need that is in the master plan. Is it possible to build the gym, pull out the pool, but the pool would be like a placeholder for the new pool? You can't leave the existing pool in place to do the new gym though, right?
So
It's tricky. yeah.
it will be very tricky,
Yeah.
but it's not impossible, I would say, because like, for example, you could look at other scenarios where, you know, would it be acceptable to put the pool in place of, for example, one of your softball fields, right? Like something like that. You would build it away from the thing. It's not the ideal location, right? But then you could do that.
Or look at a
without
temporary
the gym.
pool. There's
Right.
temporary pools too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there, you probably wouldn't, I mean, the cost of that, they've got,
You gotta get water to it.
yeah, pre-manufactured pools or the Mertha pool system, but it doesn't, it's no less cost than a conventional pool.
Or we could rehouse them temporarily.
Yeah. Sure, like, you know, some people will go, there's some districts will look into like, they provide community college and they already have a Olympic sized pool, they'll practice over there instead, right? And all this other ones in the works.
I'd like to propose exterior play into the mix for tier 1. Seems kind of dangerous, you know, that the kids are running on like the Grand Canyon, for example.
The cracks
The
in the
cracks
asphalt.
on the asphalt, yes.
Is that this
So
one?
that's
Is that-
L.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's L, yeah.
and would that be for
So,
all
yeah,
of the sites or
The
just?
San Marino High School is this much of this pie, so this much of this.
I think maybe
And
we
what
could
is that?
discuss.
Is that resurfacing the turf, basically?
Yeah,
That's a
so
big part of it.
upgrades of irrigation, upgrades to the turf. I think there was some synthetic,
I think the turf is gonna be beyond its life expectancy, so it's gonna replace that. Or was it the track?
It's,
at the 10-year mark, and then you would have to
baseball, and
replace that.
softball, track and field, tennis courts, field house, concession. It's, yeah, it's pretty much everything up top.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a big area, right? You've got the northern portion of the campus and then the whole baseball field and then the track stadium. But yeah, we can put it up there and we can see what it kind of looks like. Sort of your. Put it up there now.
Includes even shade structure, resurfacing, repairing the hard courts.
Yeah.
Play fields, baseball, softball fields. repair the matches.
We're done.
Well, okay, so I'm looking at the HMS one though, and the HMS outdoor learning environment and exterior play refers to new learning courts and student amphitheater for 2 million. And then there's a middle school play yard with shade structure, hard courts and play fields, and that's another 2.5. So that's essentially 4.5 at the middle school.
Now, just be careful with these estimates. So the numbers here, these are the hard construction cost numbers. You have to multiply times 1.33 to get to the.
So I should be looking at the last column.
Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously, these are just totaling these numbers. So if you just want to say like, oh, 100,000 for that, it'd be 133,000 if you just wanted to do.
Which
one.
number in the FAC shared file, which number is being used in, which number of this one is reflected in?
All
here?
these total.
Okay,
costs.
so it's the last column.
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
so it's really 2.8 plus 3.2 is the middle school for outdoor
Mhm.
and exterior.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But if you wanted to like look at these line items, say, oh, we don't want to do that, then
Right.
you'd have to take this number out
Okay,
times 1.33.
gotcha.
But outdoor learning is a different category. It's, this category, the K category. Yeah.
Because I would propose taking out whatever is being proposed at HMS. So just,
We could cut that
That's
out.
easy,
Yeah.
you can do that.
I feel like that's kind of an easy one since they just got
They got a lot of. work
parts
last
and
time.
they have some shelter, and if that's what it's going towards, an amphitheater and I'd be okay with losing that.
Sure.
I'm always thinking,
And then what about?
to manage the construction, the outdoor is like the separate area, isolate. Anytime I can go to, but we need to think about I think this may be the only opportunity. This time it will pass. Then you have to do more complicated construction,
You're right.
the floor plan, the design where we want to do. And then for the outside field, you can come back to do, but I know that one of the member always mentioned about the sports, yeah.
They do.
But I mean you do the camping, I think below the 5 million probably easier to do it, yeah. You can find a resource, but if the big amount, you don't utilize the fund, you never have a chance to make a change.
Big construction.
Yeah.
project. Yeah.
Right.
I
So
agree. I
my
also-
recommendation also is that we do encompass a little bit more, because there are 14 categories, right? Yeah, but you've spent 140, so we
Well,
want to make sure
I'm-
we've starting to
I
cut.
am not in agreement with the exterior play. So,
Okay,
uh,
yeah.
We're
so-
not done with that.
No,
Yeah,
no, I
okay,
mean,
so-
I mean, like,
But
at all.
she
right
wants, like at all, she's mean.
Like at all right now, in the sense of, I think we need to look more at like seismic refitting. Like if you look at new construction of classrooms, there's a great need to get rid of the portables, at least. And then the two new TK facilities at both elementary schools is, I mean, I know that our cabinet is very supportive of that and, are seeing that as a great need going forward. I don't think we should ignore that, insight.
Cut Huntington
So-
out, just-
Oh, yeah, I could cut Huntington off and it's just the elementary sites with the TK and replacement of portables. There, that's what the FAC did.
At least you can
Wanna
see
do
what that block would be, yeah.
So like for play things outside, I agree with what Joseph's saying. We can do these standalone outside things, you know, with less disruption, and we're gonna do major construction. It's the time to do it with this.
Oh, where you were saying like the bond dollars should be focused on the the building infrastructure.
Mhm.
Some of these could be funded in other.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
obviously
maybe go
everything
on the side.
everything stays on the project list because, in the event we have people who want to partially fund something going forward, we can maybe put some bond dollars towards it, but.
Can we just put can we put L sort of like on the board, but not necessarily on the thermometer?
I'm just looking for some tape. We've got some tape.
We can kind of use this for time being. It'd be like the tier 2 uses a place.
Just so we know that it's like on something we've talked about and
Yeah.
we'll circle back around to.
Okay. It's Huntington back.
Hold on.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you so much. So.
So that's what, C?
See,
And I think we need to cut some of the food services, right? Because
Yes.
food services are
Right.
picking up a lot.
Right.
take the high school off of there, I would think, and half of it.
Take the high school out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, take high school, yeah.
Now, you know, Huntington had some needs, but. I guess if you think about pulling out Valentine from that whole food service area,
Right.
maybe that right sizes up, so maybe you don't need to do some expansion.
So that was kind of, so the Huntington stuff had more in mind expansion? With,
I mean,
And I
they
think
did
in modern,
maybe
just also cosmetic improvements and,
Cosmetic,
you know,
it could be updated, but
Yeah,
I know
I
they
mean, it
got
could be
a
like
lot of new
HVAC.
kitchen equipment recently.
yeah, right.
I mean, there could be system upgrades too. I mean, if you want to put a little money in there and not the whole thing and not expand their lunch shelter or. I mean, you could think of it that way too.
what are we cutting off then from the
From the food
NPR and
services?
food
Yeah.
service?
Yeah, I'm cutting the NPR and food service, so what,
I
guess
think
we
you
call
said
it-
take the high school out to start with, or
Take the high school off
for food
Yeah,
service?
I cut it off already, so then.
and
now
then,
in elementary.
and then are we cutting off the middle school?
Yeah,
Oh,
completely?
okay.
Right?
And then I thought we
Right.
were.
And then part of the
increasing-
elementary.
Yeah,
because you're also
increasing
looking
some
at
elementary.
priority one, priority
Right,
two.
right.
So it's still on there. It's not like. it's
So
not-
maybe you think Carver, maybe just half, give them half or half of the.
Well, let me
what's
see what's the
10
point of
million?
giving
Only
it.
They were thinking.
I want it too.
Well, I'm like, what's the point? Okay, so what are we giving?
Well, it was 7 million, it is 7 million, so I think maybe half. of the
Actually, no,
7.
sorry, I was looking at the wrong column, so that's 10.
It's like 10.
Yes,
million, so
it's 10 million.
5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think 10 million total in that category.
Yeah. Cause
For the two schools,
Valentine
Valentine
is
building.
already how much?
Valentine
Eight
is,
point five.
8.5? No, isn't it 11?
It's gonna be 11.
11,
Oh.
yeah.
Valentine's already taken up.
Mm.
So I could cut the Carver one by half and then it would be a total of 10.
5,
or you could say
16
something,
mil,
15 mil, like
15 mil.
something like that. So then you're spending like 4 at
Mhm.
Carver.
Well, however much it is for their expanded lunch.
So expanding
about
in
2.3
their
million.
lunch area and all of that.
About 3 million, let's just say.
Yeah, it looks like about, probably about 3
So
million.
14-ish. 15 is.
Let's just say this is.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just write a note and.
Be pretty
that
consistent
it
with the
would just be
FAC at this point?
expanded.
I mean,
now that we have a little extra million, now we need to go back to the canyon. We need to fix the exterior.
Yeah, hold on.
This needs to be adjusted. please.
Wait, oh, don't.
That was up the left side, and lowered it down, so you.
Here.
So Carver's Elementary Play Yard, not including the solar structure. Let me see.
$5 million.
Apparatus.
Yeah.
Surface.
Is that C just Valentine and Carver? I can't see that far.
That's Valentine and Carver. I think that's too much.
Yeah,
We
that's a
have to
lot.
look at a graduated program, how much we're spending, it's too much. I mean, look at it.
Well, I mean,
This, the C compared to A, like you're equating the TK or pre-program as equivalent to all of that. 2 sites for versus 4 sites.
I think the
But
problem
look
is
what's
that
done in these other schools, right? So I think that was the thought.
What's up?
This doesn't-
I think the problem with looking at them apples to apples with just the chunks there that can't, like, you either do that new stuff or you don't. Like, and there's, I mean,
Hard to do how.
they've done, like, there's standardized cost per square foot that they're using to estimate. It's not like they're like just like saying it's this much a square foot, but really you could do it for half as much. I mean.
No, you wouldn't be able to do that, or it's kind of like we've programmed 5 TK classrooms and you only do 2, like it would be kind of like that, right?
And there's no point, I mean, you can't do that because you're building a new building anyway, so what's 2 more rooms?
Yeah.
Well,
So we
the
have
way
to-
that I'm looking at it is it's such a big budget for new classrooms when there's no real grasp of what that will look like in terms of how many more students will be housed and how many more. I mean, of course, we'd like to look at enrollment as either being stable or growing, but the trends are not looking that way right now. So for me, I feel like putting that much funds into new classrooms where it could have gone in other areas at the school also.
I'd like to just replace the portable.
Yeah, just replace the portables, but I mean, not
I find that as a
necessarily.
big priority, they're in bad shape and that they were in not great shape when we first got them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For it to go.
they were already pre-owned, right? I mean, they weren't even new when we first got the portables. The portables are well beyond their natural life.
And I mean,
Yeah.
we could look at getting new portables that are better engineered and you could even make the facade to look like they're real buildings, but
I mean, like prefab
yes.
prefab buildings
Yeah.
or in place of the portables instead of a portable is another option to look at, like in terms of having that replaced. I think new classrooms is a really great idea.
But we can pull TKs out of there too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then we don't know how much that costs.
So do we know the breakdown in there of C, which ones are the TKs versus replacing the portables?
Yeah, you.
So-
And why is
I know.
Valentine's
Yeah,
like
I know.
$29
Yeah.
million?
Because there's that need with the TK, right? It's not exactly one to one because
That's what
it's sort of like the smart way to like replace, right? Because TKs are larger in size, first of all, and then also they have the restroom component to it, right? And so basically what I was saying is removing your portables and building, rather than building a standard classroom 1-for-1, build that new TK rather than trying to retrofit your existing building and then get all in there. And then you have to do structural upgrades, get all the plumbing in there that's not even existing. So you're spending all this money on an existing building and moving the walls around. It's a lot more complicated than just building a new construction thing that's outfitted already for a TK program. And so that's why I'm saying it's not exactly a 1-for-1, like you wouldn't replace a 960 with a 960 portable.
So Joanne, here's
Yeah.
Carver's site. So you can see there's K is new construction down in the lower left, and then the TK is on the upper part.
Yeah.
And then there's still some portables, it looks like that are remaining, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So they're not all going away.
Why, I'm just gonna ask the question, why are we looking at doing TK expansion on each site? As opposed to
Yeah.
maybe we start with a TK classrooms on one site
And see what.
and then I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm asking the question.
I think because, why are we looking at having it at both sites? Because our community values neighborhood schools and they may have older siblings. And they don't want to have one child at Valentine and the other at Carver. We have talked about that in the past, and we could certainly survey our parents. But in the past, when we've talked about, as an example, having the primary grades at one school and the upper grades at the other, we had standing room only in the board room. I mean, parents were just so unhappy about that in general.
Sure.
I would like to
And-
ask the
and so
question
that's
now,
one of the
again,
reasons
of
why-
the parents.
Yeah, we could
I
certainly
mean,
do that.
if we have TK
Mhm.
through 3 here at Carver.
Yeah.
And 4, 5, 6, everything else up to at Huntington and Valentine.
So another,
It's still sort of neighborhood if you're
Well, I
keeping your
guess-
kids at one school.
I
you know,
guess-
That's the point.
Here's a question, because at one point we did only have TK at Carver.
Right.
And then before we started expanding, we like went one and then we did the other and then we did one and the other. What was the feedback from that?
So parents are, I mean, if you were to talk to our registrar, she will tell you that parents want their children to be at the same school and at their neighborhood school. And that is a general thing that we deal with on an ongoing basis. So every time we have to explain to a parent that either there's a grade level closed in their neighborhood school, so they have to go to the other school and they have the right to come back the following year. It's kind of a big deal and it's a long conversation and we really have to walk parents through that conversation. So it's difficult. It sounds easy, it sounds simple, but when you're having these conversations with parents every day, like we do, I can tell you that first priority would be having your child at your neighborhood school. Some of our
But we are
parents, by the
looking
way-
at, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's
w-
okay.
But you're talking about the people who are not by right at a certain school necessarily, or they move in later. So I mean, you're not really talking to the majority. I mean, yes, the ones who you talk to are upset about it,
Mhm.
but there's also the fact of there's a word that this elementary school is better than this one, and
Mhm.
and there's arguments on both sides,
Right.
like passionately, but if there's just one,
So the other thing that we
There's
talked
just one.
about the last time, I believe at the FAC,
yeah.
was we were thinking about that in the context of saving money for the playground, right? But there's a square footage requirement, if I'm not mistaken, right, per student. So you're just transferring, you're gonna
Yeah.
you're gonna pay the same amount of money,
Yeah.
whether it's at one school or 2 schools.
Right.
Because it's the same number of kids that you're serving, and maybe you can help me explain that.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah.
We're talking about
Like,
redundancies.
for example, even if you were going to have it at one school site or other, you know,
Mhm.
the total demographic that we're looking at, total number of TK students, you're starting with the because instead of providing 5 at Harvard, we're going to provide the 10 classrooms here instead of at Valentine. Then you would need more 3rd, 4th, 5th grade classrooms there because now you're shifting all of the ones that are currently at Carver over to that school site. So it's just like a little chess game.
Yeah.
The question is whether
Yeah.
the need is really there, because we are trying to accomplish like the full potential, because TK is not a requirement, you're required to have to
Right.
offer, but not 100% of every
Right.
available kid will go to TK, so maybe
Right.
you could say, do we need 5 here? Maybe we build 4 and 4.
Right, I
instead.
think that's kind of the idea. Well,
But
And
like
also
what
when
Joe May
you-
was saying, what's the difference, like, you need
Well,
it, there's an economy of scale to
speaking
building
to-
2
well,
versus 5.
speaking to
you know?
your, to the question of, do we put all the primaries in one and do we do all of the second upper grades at another? And then which case that, and then there, it's like you're building the same number anyway.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at a different number from one side to the other of TK, I guess in my mind, I'm also thinking about the fact that we have a lot of parents who are really fixating on dual language immersion, which is only at one site. And
Mhm.
so it's been weird, honestly. Our
That's a good-
numbers
that's a
are
good
very
example, though.
odd, right? Because
Yeah.
we're not even anymore, because some parents, they have younger kids and they're putting them at Carver for the dual language, but they have Valentine kids already. So it's plain.
We are we are continuously in a conversation with Valentine parents about the
Right.
perceived inequity, right?
Right.
So we're thinking, building for the future. We're starting with this dual language immersion program in Mandarin at Carver, which is open to kids from Valentine and Carver.
Right.
And eventually we are likely to build a dual language immersion program in Spanish
So you're
or
looking at-
using another language at Valentine, right? So that we have equity. But right now, Valentine parents would really like us to see, like us to do that because they're not happy that they don't have that.
But I think
The other thing to think about is that if you build TK, that room is larger, so then you have the flexibility of using it for TKK. And it could definitely be used as a first, second, third grade classroom, right?
And another thing, that's right. And
For enrollment, right, the shift in that, right?
Mhm. Another thing we need to think about is the possibility of just putting it out there of having a preschool, because I believe that a preschool would be a feeder for our resident parents. Once people enroll their preschool kids with us, as opposed to putting them in private, we have a shot of keeping them for the rest of their academic career.
on what site are you thinking?
I'm saying that we could have preschool at either site or both sites.
Like it.
If the TK numbers aren't as great as we're anticipating, you could have, one of those spaces would accommodate a preschool, right?
But aren't we getting into a whole nother level of play yard equipment at that point?
You're
too?
getting into another level, but yeah, right? It's the same for TK?
What's the
Yeah.
age on play yard?
I mean, it depends how young
Like
pre-K goes, but.
2 to 5, usually the equipment comes in a scale you can purchase
2 to
from
5.
2 to
Mhm.
5-year-old equipment for the TK play yard instead of how we have it. It's separate. You could separate the two play yards. A lot of school districts will do that. Yeah.
I apologize for interrupting, but the board, if we can look at, are we finished with what we're proposing? Because I'm
The other
going into
stuff.
closed session in 4 minutes.
Oh.
And so we can pause closed session, but then we're going to change our agenda. And so we want to make sure we finish instead of getting into the weeds and just talking. I mean, we could probably talk about this for days and days, and we'd have more questions than we have answers right away, right? Because our job today was to prioritize and at least get a preliminary look at this, a first crack at it. And so I want to keep us on task, and I apologize. Yes, and Keegan hasn't presented. So,
Not presenting.
Q&A.
so he's here for Q&A, but he doesn't have a presentation. Well, he should at least have 4 minutes. I mean, I'm just.
Is he still here?
No, he's not like that.
He gave us 2 and he left.
No, but I think he satisfied our question.
No, I know. I think he probably just.
Oh, just stepped out for a second.
Yeah.
So I guess,
Okay, let's
so
finish.
the ones we didn't look at are D, F, and G, H, I, and M. Those are the ones we haven't touched at all.
I mean, I know FAC went over this extensively and they seem to align with what we are all talking about as far as giving the high school something for the elective spaces. Some exterior play.
Well, I think the big one on F was the library for Valentine,
Which
right?
is
Which was 1.7,
like,
Yeah, 1.8.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I
So-
think that was the library one, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so the FAC had said to cut down on some of their modernization on Valentine to be able to
Put
fit
that
the
in.
library part in here. So if
I
you
like
wanted
that.
to do the same, you could do that too.
Sure.
I mean, I guess theoretically, can we cut down on A altogether in little places?
Yeah.
Theoretically,
Theoretically.
right?
Yes, like for instance, they gave San Marino High School half the amount that they needed.
Right, so that was something we haven't done yet. So we could
Right.
cut half
So-
of San Marino High Schools off right now.
Okay. I'm gonna point something out too for Valentine. The new construction, you can see there's a 2-story classroom building that's upper grade levels as well as the TK.
Yeah.
K. So you could split that too if you wanted to not invest in that, replacing all the portables of new classrooms in the 2-story classroom building and just do the same type of scope of both Carver and Valentine. It's another option, but you would still have some portables remaining.
You would have to leave those portable.
Yeah.
So can we cut off half of A on the high school? Yeah,
Yeah, I could do that.
I think.
You still have
I
more
don't,
space here.
if everybody's okay with it. That was what the FAC had said.
You want to match that, right? Okay. All right. And then what would you like to put up?
And then we haven't touched D or G yet.
You're taking half that, you're gonna have more capacity, so.
G is 2 million.
Student support and counseling is a
And what site are those?
Huntington and Carver.
I thought Huntington had its current,
They have the Fox.
yeah, they have that,
Wellness.
yeah, the Fox Wellness Center.
I think they're looking for individual treatment spaces, right? Like the way they have at the high school, which begs the question of, can it be done the way it was done at the high school? I don't know.
Yeah, so you have quite a bit of
Oh,
space
okay.
left here. And then we can go a little bit beyond that too, right, if you wanted to. Okay,
So you're about 15 million remaining there, plus the play fields here that have been
We haven't done.
tiered.
Yeah.
is that do you want to put the outdoor play on? I think this, the elementary school ones would fit if you want to do that.
No, the STEM, the art, music,
Yeah.
electives, the CTE, career tech, that's gotta come in somewhere.
That's
Because we're not addressing the needs of our learners in terms of preparing them if we don't have something there.
Okay,
So under D, the lion's share of the 12 million is Huntington Middle School and then very small amounts.
no, here's the high school here.
No, I know, I'm just talking about the elementary.
They
here,
put,
so.
they
If
put.
you look at the elementary school, you know, a little over 1 million.
Oh.
The work at STEM art music classroom, just modernizing.
So FAC
right.
did 6
15
million
million.
for the medic
15 million.
CTE career tech.
There's about
The CTE, yeah,
15
F,
million.
the FAC allocated 13.5.
Yeah, I think that.
Okay, that would get you that would get you to 140. Approximately.
Yeah.
Mhm.
FAC was about 6 million because I think they put the.
Did 6.1
the
million.
Student council, or
Oh.
the support spaces here.
Oh, I see.
But then we still don't have any exterior play. So we need to put some part of D on.
So we could use
Um,
6 million here, and then you would have some, you could just, whatever's left, it could be dispersed among the 4 sites.
Well, I think we want to cut D though, right? We're not doing all of D.
Yeah, he's basically saying you're only doing like 6 million.
How much?
Well, FAC has the 6
6 million, yeah.
million. What else?
What
is
did
in-
that go towards?
Yeah.
What was that 6 million
What is
towards?
It says, EG medical arts.
Focus on, it could be medical arts, the robotics, it's that
So
300.
it's student programming, learning areas. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, wait, that's not even.
Yeah, that's a weird.
Oh,
Wait,
it's, no, no.
I don't really
This
understand what they
is what
meant.
it is, 100, this is at 135 million.
Like, let's say someone called.
Yeah, no,
but
but
right
then the
here.
numbers don't make, I don't
Yeah,
understand.
no,
those.
I don't think so.
Okay, so they want to give
I'm
them
saying the total is
6.
42, but they want to give
Right,
them.
as we're working through the last bit, Keegan is here and it's difficult to get everyone in the same room and it is after 6. I do want to give him some space and time. If you have any questions, if he has anything he wants to kind of globally share with us or some thoughts, because we don't always have you here at our meetings, so. Okay, can we just pause on that just for a minute? I just want to give him some space. All right,
I'm good. I don't have any more questions.
Okay. So I did have a question in terms of, okay, let's say we go out and we have this $2 million bond. What, 200, not 2 million, 200 million, how do the monies come in terms of increments and what do we have control of? Like, do we get a big lump sum or they come in at 50 million, 50 million, 50 million 4 times, or how does it work?
That's a great question. So the $200 million right now is a starting point with a certain set of assumptions. The first guiding one is the IRS, who requires that you spend 85% of your tax exempt bond proceeds within a 3-year time frame. So school districts will generally space out their bond program every 2 to 3 years. So in this current $200 million scenario,
Mhm.
we have $50 million, exactly that, in 4 issuances every 3 years. Now, if the board does elect to place the measure and voters do support it, the only things that are fixed are the total amount, which is $200 million, the tax rate, which is $60 million, and the project list. Within that, there's a lot of flexibility. The timing of your project cash flow needs will drive how much Series A might be, how much Series B might be. The underlying economic conditions, whether we have favorable interest rates or favorable assessed valuation growth, might allow bonds to be issued sooner, or conversely, if those weaken, we might need to delay some of the issuances. So it's a very dynamic program, and we would work with your team on what the priority projects are. For example, how much might be spent within the first 3 years of a successful bond, whether it's 30 million or 70 million, we would tailor to match the facility side with the finance side.
Mhm. And then I remember last time when I was talking with you that there's also the tax that comes with it. So there's a big difference between if I just pull out 50 million versus 100, do you know what I mean? And so how does that affect in terms of our paying off the taxes?
That's a great question also. So regardless of the amount that you issue, whether it's 30 or $70 million, we would structure the tax to not dip. So we would utilize $60, for instance, in the first 3 years, and then we would drop it in year 3 to
Mhm.
allow Series B to level up or to continue that $60 rate. So it's not like if you issued 30 million, we would only use a $10 tax rate to start, and then that would increase to a $30 tax rate. We would structure the bonds so that taxpayers saw a consistent tax rate. That's how the tax rate was structured in your 2 prior bond measures.
Okay, thank you. Okay. No other questions? Okay, we're good. All right.
Just say something. I don't want to feel like there's all this pressure because we're here today. We can revisit this, you know, it's only April, elections in November, so you can maybe think about it or tinker and come back with a scenario, or it's a matter of what we typically do is publish this in the actual master plan final book, and we're going to present the draft to you next month. So we can even go to the draft with just maybe a lighter version of this, or even just document the FAC recommendations, and maybe you come back and revisit this, or
Mhm.
you don't have to feel like today is this, you know, you've got to build this thermometer, and, you know, obviously you can always come back and revisit some of these priorities, so.
You know, I appreciate the deadline is not today. Actually, what I'm more interested in, because FAC, they already have their conclusion. And right now, this meeting is asking the board as a conclusion, but I also like have the staff, they have a conclusion.
Mhm.
So we don't need to know each other what we are thinking, but you guys are the educator, and you are doing the daily management, and you also you know, need to follow for the state the guidance. So see the what from your perspective, what you come out something, and then we come out something, because we are the board, we represent the community, and we also they are the parent too. Was the parent.
Mhm.
So then
And yeah.
I feel that it's very important. You know, I think the next generation look like you know, they fear the tax. So I fear this the maybe the opportunity, you know, to issue a bond. I don't know what happened for next 20 years. They are waiting to issue the bond. But at this today, we are the group of people. We we are sincere, we want to help the community because this small city, nothing there except, the living quality and high education. If this, we cannot make it. I think the San Marino no longer to be the San Marino.
Mhm.
I think everyone move to your urban. So really, we need to see what is our need. We need to address. And also I mentioned, because I personally, I involve a lot of construction, so the bond, the reason you raise the bond, you raise the big dollar amount one time, you really need to have the master plan, see which location you want to put those building, and then that's it. And the rest of, if a freestanding the project, you may raise the money, or you later someone will help you. But if you don't have a systematic the idea, and then you do this, do that, and later, the another generation said, remove, destroy the building again. Then they always have the power for the student to utilize the facility. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great point, Mr. Chang, about hearing all voices, and we want to include our management staff as well as our cabinet. Francesca, go ahead.
I would just like to say that it's my opinion that with the master plan, when we look at a timeline, we take the priorities and we know what all the needs are. And if we're building it out over 10, 15 years, that we schedule another bond issuance at some point. So it's more of a regular occurrence, and we're just maintaining, and we're not going back and having crumbling everything. So it's not going to be as much maintenance if we can maintain our investments in a better scheduled way. So like in 8 years, we could put on a timeline. Now that would be that board and that community's decision at that point, but I think shows foresight to have that recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, with that, should we conclude this portion of the study? And then I'm going to open up the closed session. All right, okay.